Joseph, today's question is, why buy the cow if you can get the milk? We hear, somewhat speculatively, that Apple is interested in buying Renesas out of its liquid crystal display JV. So why would Apple, which can have its way with electronic suppliers around the world, put equity to work in this way?
Yeah, I think to answer your first question, it's either because the cow is on its last leg and you may as well take it in anyway, or it's because you want the milk a lot faster. And it may be the latter here.
Right.
Because if Apple has to launch a next generation iPhone this year, and it needs to get it to market quite quickly, then maybe it should go and buy parts of that supply chain in Asia to get stuff faster.
What makes this particular company important in that context?
Well, the Renesas JV here makes LCD display chips, which make the images on iPhones sharper and supposedly prolong the battery life, even though it's quite unbelievable considering battery life on iPhones isn't that great.
It doesn't seem to have been actually prolonged.
But it would be very important if you were going to make iPhones with larger screens, for example.
Yes. And now, has Apple done any consolidating moves like this before?
I mean, if you look at similar acquisitions in semiconductors, for example, like Intrinity, Passive, in the last few years, it's been more buying teams and maybe the IP rather than
capacity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and you have to remember, Renesas has an interesting history in itself. Like the company on top of this JV, because it was essentially rescued by the Japanese government at the end of 2012 because being a chip maker is not a great business this decade. So it's a different, setup really for Apple to get involved with.
But in the past, with the other screen components, the Sapphire screens, they've done a supply deal, a kind of captive supply deal, right?
I mean, if you look at GT Advanced Technologies, which is a US company which supplies Sapphire to Apple, and made an agreement with them in November. Since then, its shares are up like 115%. So even though the company said on announcing, our gross margins will fall because of the agreement and because of Apple's sort of very specific approach to stuff. Well, I mean, once you're one of the haves rather than the have-nots in Apple's supply chain, it can be quite a comfortable place to be. It's just what happens towards the end.
Right, and when the company changes their mind.
I mean, with Sapphire, because Sapphire is much harder than glass, so it could be used for smart watches, camera lenses, whatever. But it's like, what happens if Apple designs you out entirely one day?
So being anywhere in the Apple supply chain can be a two-edged sword.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Joseph.